Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me today. You might want to pull up a chair. We're going to be talking about oxygen. You're thinking, wow, who is she, Captain Obvious? Of course, we all need oxygen to breathe. But I stumbled on something that is literally insane that has to do with oxygen. Oxygen and sugar feed cancer in a way that is off the charts because I now believe our homes were designed because we're in a eugenics program, right? Let's not lose sight of that. The way our homes are designed actually are creating a lot of this cancer. And it's not just about the plutonium, but they add the plutonium with the smart meters, right? So that's how it's all working. And it is so simple. It actually kind of boggles my mind. But before I get started, Happy New Year 2025. It is the year of the snake. Don't forget, the word Vatican literally means divining serpent and is derived from the words Cain and serpent. Yeah, Vatican and the serpent. Welcome to 2025. So today I'm going to be talking about some things that sound so simple, but hang in there with me because it is almost insane, this simple information and how it all got buried. And they figured this all out like in the 30s in Germany, believe it or not. So before I get started, I got to thinking about this, about the oxygen and stuff, because I've learned more about the oxygen and stuff in the last few months. But remember, a few years ago, I started proposing that people put fans in their windows, get that fresh air in. Well, I've been being driven by instincts, right? I knew that the plutonium was in the house, and I could tell by, the cats getting sick and me getting sick. So I just instinctively knew the air was good to come in, right? Well, so how have I lived with cancer for this long? Well, when they installed the transformer on my smart meter, they likely had figured that within a year I would be probably so sick that I would no longer be buzzing around and talking, right? And probably within a year and a half, I would be dead, right? Well, I haven't died. Now, I'm certainly very, very sick, but I have been maintaining. And it's interesting because the things my instincts were telling me to do are the things that are actually the reason I'm alive and the reason that this is a eugenics program. Because, for example, ditching the sugar and focus on an alkaline diet. They have us doing all kinds of things like coffee first thing in the morning. Well, worst thing you could have been doing. Try some lemon and water instead. So I'm going to be covering this because it's very interesting because I did an interview this week. It was the first one I've done in years. The host was a very nice man named Jeffrey Prather. And I realized during my interview with him that a lot of the ideas that I have are ideas that I've had for a long time that I've been talking to everybody on my podcast about. But if you hear me for only a few minutes talk about, well, put fans in your windows, it starts to rattle that crazy cage, right? Now, I do not agree with people calling me crazy, but it seems to be what they like to do. So here's what I have to say about that. Before you call another person crazy, remember, this is about us and them. And whenever we started snaring each other, it doesn't really come to any good. So maybe in the future, before you call me crazy, maybe ask me where I got that idea from, right? Because I've put all these years into this. Most people like myself that do the actual work do not show up on social media. Just doesn't happen. They're over busy in the blog world. They're doing all the real work over there. They don't have YouTube channels and all that. I am different, well, in lots of ways. And I decided that it would be a very unique thing to do, would be to share my work as I went along, as opposed to going away, doing all this research that I've been sharing with you all along, and then writing a book. Well, obviously, it was a pretty good idea because I'm not going to be around long enough to write that book. And also, it just it feels like it was something that I needed to do. It feels like it was my objective while I was here to share in real time. And I'm glad I followed my instincts because now I would have all this information, but I'd be getting ready to die. So I wouldn't be able to publish it in a book. Besides, people don't really read our books. I offered my book for free because people were saying, well, I can't afford your book. I'd love to read it. I said, okay, well, here, you can have it for free because the only reason I wrote my book was to help other people. So I'm not possessed over the money. So then I offered my book for free. And then I heard, well, I don't really like reading the e-version. So you can't have it all ways, okay? In good faith. And then other people said, well, it must be a lousy book if you're giving it away for free. Well, certainly those are impressions. They're your impressions, not mine. But, maybe, just maybe, we can show a little solidarity to each other. Just maybe. I have had to struggle constantly, because no one believed that psychopaths were around, particularly in the numbers that they're around. So my work has been a constant struggle to keep going. And I get very little support, and what I get is a lot of this crazy business. So I would suggest that the next time you meet somebody like me and you immediately think, ha, must be crazy, maybe get to know that person. Maybe talk to them. It's like these kids, I keep telling you, be that one person that hears these kids. So anyway, so enough of that. So anyway, so I only started the fan business because I knew that I needed to get air into my house because of the uranium higher levels in my house than obviously in your house. But this is going to impact absolutely everybody. And it's because of the way that our structures are built. And before you say, well, we all have to have houses. Well, but the way our houses are built, remember, they are the ones that came up with these houses, right? So, and that's the other reason why they want to have us inside of these houses more and more. It'll start to make sense in a minute. So, but I knew that we needed oxygen, obviously. Anybody would know that, right? But the number one thing you have to have is oxygen, right? You have to have oxygen, sleep, food, and that stuff. There's only 3 or 4 things you absolutely have to have. And oxygen and water and food are those things, right? So I just found such crazy information that it blows my mind how simple it is, because you hear these people online and you look up people about cancer, because I know what these people are up to. A lot of them have very, very good intentions. That's not what I'm saying. But the general belief is somebody would start a website or something and say, I'm going to tell you how to cure that cancer. And what they're going to also be doing is showing you a bunch of vitamins to take and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, that will help you, of course. Maybe not the vitamins so much, but that will help you, of course. But it's not getting to the root cause. My work is all about the root cause, getting in there and figuring out, hey, how did this stuff happen? Because that's helps us to find how to make changes, right? So as long as we don't know, like people know like fluoride is bad, but they don't understand that it's pollution from the nuclear business, right? So if you live your life only learning half facts or entering the stage halfway, you never get the whole picture. So I am a crazy person over root cause. How did we get started here? Because what happens when most people get cancer or something, right? Well, they go home, they rest in their beds, they have the heat on, they have the air conditioning on, and they're not getting fresh air. I think the trick is in our homes. And just hear me out here, okay? It plays a vital role in metabolism, respiration, and energy production. Without oxygen, most living organisms would not be able to survive, and the ecosystem would collapse. They found this out years ago, and this is probably one of my wildest stories I've ever told you. Dr. Otto Warburg, Warburg, was a German scientist who dedicated his life to researching cancer And in the 1920s, Dr. Warburger discovered its prime cause. Frustrated by the lack of acceptance of his ideas, Warburg often spelled out the axiom attributed to Max Planck. He said, "Science advances one funeral at a time." And there's this other thing. All chronic pain, suffering, and disease are caused from a lack of oxygen at the cell level. And this is from another doctor. So, and don't worry, I'm not going to get crazy. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. The only reason I look is simply because I don't know, not because I'm so incredibly clever, right? So I do have a couple of basics here because I needed to look for myself because, like I said, not a scientist. So here is what cancer is. Cancer is a disease of damaged cellular metabolism characterized by a shift from the oxidation of sugar to the fermentation of sugar. So I'd like to add this. The two things that are going to give you and increase your cancer are oxygen and sugar. So lack of oxygen and sugar, consuming refined sugar. Those two things are going to increase your cancer. And this is exactly why everybody all around the world is getting cancer. So let me keep reading here. Virtually everyone working in cancer research is familiar with the Warburg effect. So it's the extraordinary story of the Nazi-era scientific genius who discovered how cancer cells eat and what it means for how we should treat ourselves. Otto Warburg, a cousin of the famous finance Warburgs, was widely regarded in his day as one of the most important biochemists of the 20th century, a man whose research was integral to humanity's understanding of cancer. He was also among the most despised figures in Nazi Germany. As a Jewish homosexual living openly with his male partner, Warburg represented all that the Third Reich abhorred. Yet Hitler and his top advisors dreaded cancer and protected Warburg in the hope that he could cure it. So, when you mention oxygen therapy in the medical community, the skeptics like to point out that none has been proven in all cases. So, but the difference between alternate therapies as opposed to the go-to traditional cancer modules used at the various stages of cancer is that they aren't dangerous, yet they fail. They aren't going to add to the problem or kill you, but they're not going to necessarily heal you. Unlike chemo and radiation, I certainly did a show about that. If you do chemo, you're pumping radiation into your system. And just briefly, what happens is when they shoot the chemo into you, let's say you have a tumor cell in your neck, okay? They shoot the chemo into that tumor and they'll explain all this. Well, we're going to shoot it with this radiation. We're going to make it go smaller in size. Look, we can show you it's smaller in size. Yeah, they could probably show you on an x-ray that, yes, look, okay, we shot you with all of this chemo stuff and now your tumor is smaller. Well, yeah, that probably is true. But what really happens is this. The radiation makes that tumor blow stuff all over your whole system. So now that tumor becomes spread out through your whole blood system. So they take what could have been just a simple tumor, they shoot it with the radiation, which in fact spins it through your whole body. So anyways, just to give you an update in case you didn't hear, I would suggest you go look to the show I did about chemotherapy because I went into all the technical reasons. So unlike chemo and radiation, your body will not be a wasteland that is unable to defend itself from the common cold, much less cancer. Cancer cells are not like any other cells in the body. Dr. Otto Warburg was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1931 for his research proving that cancer cells use a form of non-oxygen metabolism to survive. So you create by not having enough oxygen. It's very simple. And when you live in a house, you don't get as much real oxygen as you do when you walk outdoors, or in my case, have fans blowing the air in. So oxygen provides far less fuel for cancer cells. So when you get the oxygen in, it deals with all of those cancer cells. Because what's happening is we're starving our bodies of oxygen by being inside. And so, well, I got to keep reading here because I'm not doing very well today. So anyway, so if I start explaining and getting crazy, then you might, the reason I start to wander more recently is because that's what radiation poisoning does to the brain. So I have to monitor myself constantly. So I'm monitoring myself by saying, keep reading. So blood oxygen level is the amount of oxygen in your blood, obviously, right? Some people with certain respiratory disorders or diseases like COPD may have a harder time getting oxygen into their bloodstream and need treatment through doctor-recommended treatments. If you're struggling with a chronic illness like COPD, heart failure, or sleep apnea, increasing your oxygen at home can help improve your symptoms. But even the healthiest people can benefit from improving air circulation and removing pollutants from the air at home. We'll show you how to increase oxygen levels in your home. But here's the thing. You'll find people showing you how to increase oxygen levels. Well, it depends on what you can afford. Before I would buy a machine, I absolutely would not buy a machine that said they're going to clear up my air and spend $500 on it. These box fans cost $20, okay? So I'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, so increasing cellular oxygen kills the cancerous cells. The link between oxygen and cancer is clear. In fact, an underlying cause of cancer is usually low cellular oxygenation levels. In newly formed cells, low levels of oxygen damage respiration enzymes so that the cells cannot produce energy using oxygen. These cells can then turn cancerous because they don't make enough energy to function normally in the body. And it's really interesting because I've just been naturally doing some of these things. Like on days that I'm really not doing very well, I'll take a break and I position my face. I put the bed down so I can lie down and closer to the fan. So I have a turbo fan in here, and I lie down and I make sure I can feel the fan blowing directly on my face. So all the air I'm breathing is coming from outside. And actually, that's really the simple answer for what I've been doing. But I've only been doing that by instincts. I didn't know all this stuff. So, okay. So yeah, I just read that part. Okay. And also it's very important you're breathing. Breathing well begins with nasal breathing. For starters, the lungs don't like cold, dry air. Nasal breathing warms and humidifies your breath before it reaches the lungs. And I'd heard this from this woman, Barbara O'Neill, and I'll talk about her in a moment. There's this woman who's a naturopath, and without a doubt, this woman is the smartest woman I have ever seen in my life, okay? She really knows all this stuff. And when I get a chance, I'll watch some of her clips. And she was talking about that one day, and it made sense. She said you need to breathe through your nose, not through your mouth. And here's why. When you breathe through your nose, air travels past bony structures in the nasal cavity called turbinates, which are covered in soft tissue known as mucosa. These turbinates are what warm and humidify your breath. Nasal breathing also clears the air you breathe thanks to tiny hair-like filters in the nasal cavity called cilia that act as filters. Cilia capture dust, pollution, allergens, smoke, bacteria, viruses, and assorted other debris in the air you inhale and traps it in the mucosas. From there, the debris is eventually pushed into your throat and swallowed. Nose breathing also forces you to use your diaphragm, the muscle that sits below the lungs. Diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing, as opposed to chest breathing, increases the efficiency of the lungs by activating the lower lobes, which contain a larger percentage of blood than the upper lobes. But wait, there's more. Breathing through your nose also increases the amount of oxygen in your blood more than mouth breathing, which is essential to virtually every cell, organ, and tissue in your body. That's because nasal breathing releases nitric oxide, an important molecule for blood vessel health. Nitrous oxide is a vasodilator, meaning it relaxes and widens the blood cells, causing them to increase circulation. This allows blood nutrients and oxygen to travel more efficiently through the body. Nitric acid also decreases plaque growth and blood clotting. In fact, if the body doesn't produce enough nitric oxide, it can lead to heart disease, diabetes, and erectile dysfunction. Who would have guessed, right? I'm just pretty much blown away. It's just common sense stuff, right? Imagine if your doctor asked you, well, how are you breathing? Are you breathing through your nose? How is the air in your house? They're never going to ask that. They're just going to give you pills. So let me see here. And they've also found that nasal breathing can improve athletic performance. They did in 1990, they compared nose breathing exercises and they figured it all out. But anyways, I have all those notes down below. So let me tell you what I have down below before I continue on here. Every piece that I'm talking about, I found a lot of information on how to increase oxygen levels in your home, why breathing through your nose is best. They are starving us of oxygen. Why do we need oxygen, the crucial element of life? What's one thing you can't live without? And then Otto Warburg, I found some very interesting. I tracked down everything I could on this man because I found a book that's talking about him called Ravenous, the Nazis, and the Search for the Cancer Diet Connection. And I found a copy of that book. So they're all down below. And also Barbara O'Neill, the smartest woman on the planet. She has a show. I mean, I would recommend go just take your time. If you have children, it would be very foolish not to listen to this woman because she will give you we know antibiotics don't work already, so she will give you all kinds of ways to use simple things like garlic and onion. Those are things you can grow in your home. If I had children, I would be growing garlic and onion, and I would be paying very close attention to what this woman has to say. You got to pull yourself out of the system if you really want to make a change. You can't have it both ways. We can't say, oh, doctors, hospitals are horrible and keep rushing in there. And then the day they decide to keep somebody, you really have no right to complain if you continue to expose yourself to these people. But I'll stop lecturing. So anyway, so I have quite a few links to Barbara O'Neill's work. And so you can look her up. And certainly she has been, I don't sit around watching her video, but I've learned simple things like the alkaline business. I didn't know the difference between alkaline or non-alkaline. I didn't know that we shouldn't have a cup of coffee to start off the day with. Pretty bad. But no, she doesn't tell you to do radical stuff. This is not like some person who's going to tell you to change your whole life, but she offers you some very simple remedies. So let me keep going here. So anyway, so they found a lot about this nose breathing, and there's a lot of you'll need to learn and read those things for yourself. So, because the only reason I am still alive because I've been doing these things, okay? I try to listen to people who know more than I do. I only guessed the things I'm doing. Today, I want to share with you why they will work. Because what happens when we get sick? Well, we stay inside our homes or hospitals and we have the heat or the air conditioning on, right? The last thing we're getting is air. So let me get back to this Dr. Otto Warburg. It's Warburg. Yeah, I was calling it Warburger before. And here's something to clear up because seldom does a week go by without articles, internet posts, and advertisements which maintain that Nobel laureate Otto Warburg discovered that cancer was caused by low oxygen and acidic pH. Though often misreported, Dr. Otto Warburg did not win the Nobel Prize for finding that cancer cannot live in an oxygen-rich or alkaline environment. Because if you have a lot of oxygen and you're in an alkaline environment, cancer absolutely cannot. But there's misinformation about Dr. Warburg, so I'm going to clear it up here. So when you go looking later, you'll see. They say what Warburg discovered and what he was awarded a Nobel Prize for was simply making that discovery that low oxygen was characteristic of cancer cells. Otto Warburg made some groundbreaking discoveries about the mechanisms of cancer, especially as regards respiration and mitochondrial dysfunction, instead of the widely spread disinformation that Warburg discovered that lack of oxygen was the prime case of cancer that he discovered. And so they said, I misread that. So anyways, people will say that he got the Nobel Prize for the cancer thing, but he got the Nobel Prize for something else. What Warburg actually discovered was that cancer cells were low in oxygen due to a change in cellular response from using oxygen to using fermentation of sugar. Now, so yeah, this whole sugar connection, right? Don't you find it interesting that sugar is in everything? No wonder everybody's getting cancer. Cancer, above all other diseases, have countless secondary causes, but even for cancer, there's one primary cause. Summarized in a few words, the prime cause of cancer is the replacement of the respiration of oxygen in normal body cells by fermentation of sugar. The widespread misinformation of Warburg's discovery is most often used to support the sale of products, books, or treatments which center around beating cancer with oxygen and alkalizing. At one time, Warburg did hypothesize that oxygen might be used to cure cancer. However, when he tested his hypothesis and tried to cure cancer with oxygen, he failed. It's easy to see why Warburg's efforts to cure cancer with added oxygen failed. This is because lack of oxygen is not the prime cause of cancer. Toxins are the prime cause of cancer. Cancer cells are low in oxygen primarily because they have changed from taking in and utilizing oxygen for respiration to a more primitive form of respiration, which utilizes sugar instead of oxygen. It is the cancer process itself which causes most of the lack of oxygen, not the lack of oxygen which causes the cancer process. Regardless of what Warburg postulated and wrote earlier, in his later years, he became convinced that illness resulted from pollution, in that he came much closer to the true primary cause of cancer and other illnesses. This is something that had been postulated half a century earlier by the late great French scientist Anton Beauchamp. That's Bechamp. Beauchamp believed that illness is the result of a combination of toxins and an unhealthy cellular terrain. Excuse me. Prolonged exposure to toxins in combination with cells which have not been properly nourished, oxygenated, hydrated, and cleansed is the primary cause of cancer. This is especially so if one views radiation as a toxin. Over time, the stress and inflammation that result from toxins lead to a dysfunction in the cellular mitochondria. This leads to a cellular defense mechanism in which cells revert to a more primitive form of respiration, sugar fermentation. Then they refuse to die. They multiply and form a protective barrier. Simply stated, cancer cells have low oxygen because they quit taking in oxygen for respiration as part of the cancer process itself. Similarly, it is the cancer process itself which causes the body to become increasingly acidic. The body labors mightily to maintain blood pH within this normal range, and most people first get cancer when their pH is at close to the normal range. As the cancer progresses, the body becomes increasingly acidic. There have been many prime causes of cancer put forward, such as fungus, bacteria, viruses, parasites, stress, low pH, and on and on. But notably, virtually every one of those has been around for thousands of years. What has not been around and what tracks exactly with the increased incidence of cancer is toxins. Since the beginning of the industrial age, man has created over 100,000 unnatural chemical compounds. Those have been spewed or spilled in the air we breathe, the soil our plants grow in, the water we drink. It all adds up to increased cancer. And we also have the increased radiation from the nuclear bombs, and more recently, nuclear disasters, microwave radiation, the vaccines and other medications which the body recognizes as toxins, all the pesticides, insecticides, cosmetic products, and a world of household chemicals. The processed food where harmful additives are produced in and nutrition is processed out. It all adds up to increased cancer. So the trick with trying to beat cancer with oxygen is getting the oxygen inside the cells. So let me tell you a little bit more about this Dr. Warburg. Let me see here. Oh, yeah. It is frequently misreported that Dr. Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize for finding cancer, but he actually discovered something else. I don't have it right here, but so when you run across this Warburg person, when you read that he got a Nobel Prize for discovering cancer, that's not true. So what's the remedy? Well, extra oxygen as well as a healthy alkaline diet are both very healthy things to do. But you can't just rely on that and, oxygen to beat cancer. You need to also do other things. So, there's something about this carbon dioxide. I think it happens because we're breathing in stuff and breathing out stuff. But let me read this piece. I'm not sure how it's going to says if humans breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, how can one remain almost unchanged while the other skyrockets? The key is that regular air has a lot more oxygen than carbon dioxide. Oxygen constitutes about 20%, while carbon dioxide is only 0.38 in the air. Thus, carbon dioxide is capable of tripling from such a small number, while oxygen stays unchanged. So in our air, what's interesting is that our oxygen stays the same, but because we breathe out dioxide, that increases. And here again, because we're sitting inside of houses, right? And it says, although we don't have to worry about running out of oxygen in our houses, too much carbon dioxide can be harmful. At levels in the smart air office during the test, they did this test, people felt drowsy and may even perform worse on cognitive tests. They also say that atmospheric oxygen is being detonated by microwave transmissions. So obviously, you're going to think, well, this is getting crazier. No, it's not, because this is about eugenics, okay? Our bodies are fine-tuned electrical machines. If you don't get that body rest, and that's why everybody wants you on speed and all this stuff, racing all over the place. If you don't get enough rest, your body is not regenerating. It's just, frankly, as simple as that. So if you're not sleeping, you better figure out how to sleep. I offered you remedies, so you need to sleep. We have never, in the last 4 years that this house has been under attack, there was not one night that we did not sleep. And that's because the regiment we're on with that distillate weed, that THC, the weed. Go look at my marijuana section. But anyway, so yeah, I pulled myself out of the system, and I've only been using marijuana as a medicine because they took away all of our natural cures when they came up with the pharma industry. I've already gone there and done that. So here's how it works. So yeah, everything they're putting us through is actually depriving us of oxygen, right? Because here's the fact that the amount of atmospheric oxygen has been depleted from 21% because of these microwave transmissions. People talk about microwave transmissions, but nobody's talking about the oxygen, right? So because of microwave transmissions, atmospheric oxygen has been depleted from 21% in 1950 to 16% now. That's 5% in 50 years. So, yeah, we think we have a problem here. You are starving for oxygen on a daily basis. And now you are putting on masks and further deleting your ability to breathe. So, yes, every remedy they have for us is about cutting off our oxygen, right? Put those masks on and stuff. And what they say, they have some tips. And what they say is if you're having trouble, if you're in a house and you're not feeling well and stuff, go outside for 10 minutes and get some air, which proves my entire point in all of this. Get those fans in your windows and get that air coming in. I believe our homes and stuff, and you're going to go, well, wait a minute, we need homes. Well, this is really a game board, right? These are the people who created what we lived in as homes. We didn't live in structures like this in the past, right? We've gotten this from them. They're the ones that built the homes and cooked up all these ideas to gobble down sugar every minute. They're the ones who were out there hunting sugar cane to make sure that we had sugar in every single bite we take. So yeah, so they have been actively working on our oxygen. And that's why they're always talking about chemtrails. They want you looking up in the sky. They don't want you thinking that, hey, maybe my house is poisoning me. So this will give you a remedy. So if you thought I was nutso before about the fans, I hope you are hearing me right now. So yeah, cancer and oxygen and cancer cells. Also, if you choose to hang some fans in your windows, I came up with a solution a couple years ago. At first, I had trouble getting the fans to fit in my windows. Well, because my windows are old and they didn't fit the 20-inch box fans. The best fans you can buy are those 20-inch box fans. They cost about $20. And here's how you keep them working. I read this piece and it's just brilliant. Those are just cheap little fans from China, the motors, right? when you turn on your fan, you don't zip it all the way over. My fans start at 3, right? So normally you start your fan and you would zip it down to 1 if that's where you want to go, right? Don't zip it around, because he had this technical explanation, which was brilliant. But whenever you zip that thing quickly between your speeds, you're stripping your gears. So that's why those $20 fans burn out so quickly. It could have been a $100 fan and it would burn out quickly if you're just zipping it from one end to the next. And the other thing I discovered was this. When I first put fans in my windows, I have a bunch of them. I mean, because people think, well, it's kind of crazy in the winter you have fans in your window. Yeah. My thermostat, the lowest it will go is 44. So that's what my thermostat is set on. It's winter. The room I'm in is quite cold. So when your thermostat is 44, it doesn't click on that often. And remember this, their plan is to also rob us to pieces over high utility bills. So you can improve your health and you'll save a ton of money, because their plan is to get people to pay most of their income into utility bills and ways to survive. Well, you can beat that whole system. Just get some fans. The money you will save on your first month of your utility bill will pay for those fans. So what I did was, my first fans, it was kind of a disaster, because what I did was I used duct tape. I used duct tape to get them to fit in my window and to stay in my window. Well, a pretty lousy plan, right? But my next plan, which is what I'm using now, is I actually got some picture hanging wire, like that wire you use to hang pictures. You can pick some up about $2. And so now my fans, I have them hooked in front of my windows using picture wire, which is actually great, because the duct tape, as disgusting as it looked and stuff, to have duct tape all over your windows and stuff, I actually bought clear duct tape. So if you're going to use duct tape, at least buy some clear stuff. But anyway, so even that clear duct tape caused all kinds of residue on my windows. It's just a mess. But you'd be much better off and much cheaper off. Just buy yourself some of those wire hanging things, and you'll easily be able to hang your fans anywhere you want to hang them. So I need to close this off. I think I've said everything I have to say. I hope it's been in a manner that you're able to absorb it. Bottom line is, knock out that sugar. Get those fans in your window. If you want to survive without constantly being sick, that would be the first place to start. So be safe out there, and goodbye for now. Remember, this is just one big trick. I think this house trick is probably one of the better tricks they're pulling on us as far as the eugenics, because if you mention to somebody your house isn't safe, people, oh, it's a crazy idea. Just like when I mention to people that electricity is harmful. Well, that's crazy. What are we going to do without electricity? We come from an advanced society. We didn't need electricity. And like I told you, when did we get electricity? During the Gilded Age. And I still stick with my story. They took over during the Gilded Age. Those homes did not have electricity. Who put in the electricity? Well, the gypsies who took over. So yeah, when they got rid of the people that owned those buildings that were here before, all Muslim buildings and stuff, when they shipped those people off and murdered them, well, they took over those homes, and the first thing they did was install electricity. So obviously, the people who built those homes understood that our bodies could not handle electricity. I mean, let's get simple. Our bodies are electrical machines. Why do you think in all these torture things, all this MK7 thing, they use electricity on people? That's why they want to get us in to do, rattle our brains with electroshocks and stuff, because it's the most harmful thing these eugenic psychopaths could do to the rest of us. So it really doesn't have to be complicated. It's as simple as it's inside of our homes. That's why they love you posting pictures on the internet about the chemtrails, because every post you're posting about the chemtrails on the internet, you're not considering the fact that your home is likely your biggest danger spot. So be safe out there, and goodbye for now. It's the friggin' gypsies that have done all this to us.